Hey everyone, and welcome to Co Blueprint. I'm Jeanette Mulvey, the content director for Co, a publication from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today we're talking about financial planning through uncertain times. We know this is a really challenging time for small businesses, but we created this series to help you rebuild your business and come through this on the other side better and stronger than ever. Each episode, we bring you small business experts and owners who share their experiences and their ideas and strategies to help you do just that. A few housekeeping notes before I introduce today's panel. First, I'll be asking the panel your questions later in the session, so please type them in the right-hand screen on the right-hand side of your screen. And if you see a question you like, be sure to hit the thumbs up button to upvote it. Secondly, we will be conducting a poll today. You've probably already seen it, but we're asking, how would you characterize your business right now? Closed, partially open, completely open, open but remote, or other. So we'll be taking your answers later in the event. And lastly, I'd like to thank our presenting sponsor, Chase for Business, as well as our supporting sponsors, ADP, FedEx, MetLife, and Square. So now I'd like to introduce our first guest, financial planning expert, Christopher Hollins. Christopher is the general manager of cash management for Chase Business Banking. So welcome, Christopher.
Thank you. Thank you
How
very
are
much.
you?
Doing well for Wednesday. So I'm happy to be here and thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you, Christopher. So let's start by talking a little bit about who your small business clients are and what the biggest challenges they face in financial planning in general. And then we'll talk a little bit more specifically about how the pandemic has changed that.
Okay. So in the business bank for Chase, we focus on clients from $1 to about 25 million in revenue. We go across all industries. We are in over 27 states in the United States. And so we have probably a good cross section of businesses. And I wouldn't, other than the fact that these businesses drive the US economy, as we know about small business driving nearly 50% of the economy, individuals who decide to run their own business, whether they have employees or they're self-employed as sole proprietors, are extraordinarily passionate around what they're doing and why they're doing it. If they're lucky enough to be able to build a business to support others, they recognize the connection that they have to the financial well-being of other families. My father at one time was a small business owner for about a quarter century in a services business. I got to see, very close up and personally how he impacted the 15, 17 people that were in his organization. And I know for me, when I'm out talking with business owners, obviously now virtually, I'm very focused on ensuring that they keep that passion, especially during this most difficult time in most of their entire, history as a small business owner.
So with that in mind, what kinds of financial challenges do you see businesses in general facing? What do they come to you? What are their biggest problems? And how has that changed since the pandemic started?
Okay, I think the obvious one is access to capital, but I like to get underneath that a little bit because by the time there is a request for access to capital, there's a few other things that have happened, either because of planning or lack thereof. From my standpoint, obviously sitting in a cash management role, I'm very much focused on how is cash moving or money moving within that particular business. How are you thinking about your relationships with your suppliers? Have you optimized your suppliers, making sure that their terms for how you need to pay them are optimized so that you don't end up in a cash shortfall? On the opposite end, from a receivables perspective, thinking about your customers, those who owe you money, if you have a business that works that way. How do you ensure that you're not waiting for money from a contractor or for someone who owes you for services rendered and they're paying you in 90 days when you really need it to be paid in 20? That is what I see as like the biggest issue. And that goes all the way down from a restaurant who is basically moving money on a more regular basis and has to really manage their suppliers, to a law firm who is providing services to a number of clients who need to pay that law firm in a more timely way. A couple of other things that I'm seeing, Jeanette, that are probably more akin to what's happening right now is getting businesses out of a feeling of just being stalled or not knowing how to move forward. Getting them to think about what their market adjacencies are. What are the other areas within your marketplace that you can actually touch into that could potentially open up your business? And quite frankly, how do you think about market expansion? So I recognize that it's very difficult to think about that, but I'll give an example. And one of our small business owners who's going to come on today will probably talk a little bit about this. When you're in a restaurant and you can't be open, how do you think about delivery service? How do you think about engaging some of your best clients to get the word of mouth out such that you can try and make up some of that shortfall through just having a more expanded customer base from which you can try and balance the needs of today versus the reality that you're not in the business mode that you would prefer to be in.
So I think you said market adjacencies. Can you explain, is that what you said? Can you explain what that means?
Yes. So in the way I think about market adjacencies is, or what else does your business do, or who else does it touch that you would allow for you to expand? So in my example with the restaurant, it is if you have, if you're serving a geographic area and you know that in geographic areas that are near you, that there is an equal need for that particular type of cuisine. How do you actually make an impact such that people know about you? Most of that's going to be through word of mouth because you're not going to be able to do advertising to focus on that. Do you have a customer base that would, basically say great things about you such that others could see you on social media? What are you doing with your website to make it more available for others to see and understand the cuisine that you provide, see how wonderful it looks? You kind of build that capability within your business such that you can start to get customers that you didn't have before. So hopefully that explains it a little bit.
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear about what that term meant. So in terms of finances specifically, you said that that small business's biggest challenge, of course, that you hear about is access to funding. But I think what you were getting at there is that by the time you need funding, there were a lot of things probably that could have been planned ahead and that you need to be thinking about before you're ready to be seeking funding. So could you just talk a little bit more about sort of what businesses should be doing in the months ahead, to be planning months out for cash flow and for making sure they have access to, the revenue they're going to need? And I'm not talking specifically during the pandemic. I'm just saying more generally, what kind of planning should businesses be doing?
Yeah, so a couple of things that we really think about. We think about what is your bankability. I'll call it your bankability quotient. And what does that really mean? It means, do you have individuals in the financial services industry that you're connected with? Do you have a banker? Do you have a CDFI, Community Development Financing Institution, who you can engage with? Some places where people can understand and know your story, understand the business that you're running, how you're running it, starting to give them a sense for what you are about as a business owner, building that overall network. Because when you need the money, that's when having that network is going to be most useful to you. And I'll explain why on the back end of this. The second piece is what I talked about a little bit earlier, really understanding how money moves within your business. If you are in businesses where there are high dollar value items that are purchased over time, how do you think about what the terms are to ensure that you're getting paid in a timely fashion? If you are in a business that is more robust, meaning that inventories are turning, the business is turning over very quickly, How do you manage those suppliers more effectively? What we've found out is that most business owners only have cash flow for about 27 days. And in the case of, unfortunately, in Black, Brown, and female communities, that cash flow window is less than 2.5 weeks, in some cases down to 2 weeks. So anything that you can do on either getting paid faster or being able to manage how you're paying out can, potentially make the difference between you being very cash ready or optimally cash ready or cash poor, which would then get to my last piece, which is in having the ability to understand lending and what your loan accessibility really is. Because what you're really trying to do there is make certain that you know when you're in a certain situation from a cash flow perspective, that it is now time to look at other sources for access to capital. And that may mean having a line of credit. That may mean having a series of go-to financial institutions for which you've already built a relationship. They know the business that you're running. They know that you're running it very well, because you need those advocates in the process.
So it really sounds like, I think a lot of us think, well, it's really just what I put on the loan application and nothing else matters. And it sounds like you're really saying that relationships matter, and it's worth putting in the effort early to make sure that you have those relationships. So does that sound about right?
That is absolutely spot on. The way I think about this journey for business owners, and I know that sometimes people don't want to get tied up in the math and the accounting, but this is marketing. The way I think about it is marketing is from the time that you have a website to the time that you figure out how people can purchase from you, to the service that you provide, to the customer service that there kind of comes off of that. That's all about what your brand is. Part of that brand is making sure that not only do the people who pay you for you to provide your services, but that companies, institutions who could fund you also feel the same way about you. And that's built over time. That's not built in, basically off of one app. You don't want a situation wherever you can avoid it to have to go out for money without having built up some of those relationships and goodwill, because in many cases it makes a difference in terms of the strategies you may implement in order to give yourself the most options. The final point, Jeanette, that I'll make on this is that I think about the lending journey slightly differently. It's not about the money itself. It's actually more about how you think about your optionality. If you run if you have a very well-run business, you're going to have more options than someone who is probably less involved in the detail around how to run their business well from a receivables and payables perspective. And you may still have options for access to capital if you've not run it as well, but your options are either going to be limited or more costly. And look, if you're getting access to capital, you want to try to find the least expensive ways to do that so that you can actually focus on growing your business.
So it sounds like you're saying knowledge, intimate knowledge of your financial situation equals options, and options equals opportunity for businesses.
Yes, well said.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you one more question before I introduce our small
Certainly.
business. Right now, many small businesses are in survival mode. So it's really, really hard for them to think about the future, but we know that they will need to. So just what advice do you have on that? And how are you guys at Chase helping businesses do that? What should businesses be doing now, even in survival mode, to be laying the groundwork for what's to come 6 months and a year from now?
So the way we are looking at it is right now we're helping our business clients survive with the hope that we can get them to a revival and then being able to thrive. The way I think about it personally that falls into that kind of framework is that you have to plan on this time continuing to be challenging. Irrespective of whether there is a vaccine tomorrow or 7 months from now, there is a trust in terms of people wanting to be out and engaging in just the economy. We've seen tremendous spikes in online capabilities and where the economy has kind of shifted for the time being. But we're human creatures and we want to be out and about, but we've got to trust that we're in a situation where we're not going to get sick ourselves or sicken others. So just know that it's going to be a little bit of a rough road to get people back to a place where they're feeling comfortable engaging with you in the way that you're accustomed. Secondly, you have to pivot to other opportunities. Pivoting to other opportunities means you have to look at your marketplace a little bit broader and figure out how you can bring in customers in ways that you weren't before. If your e-commerce site wasn't really great, this is a great time to improve it, to figure out how you can get products and services to customers who are willing to buy, who don't know about you. And then finally, the way I think about it is you have to perform with a purpose. You have to have the discipline to continue to focus on what your dreams and your business overall plans have been. And even if you've pivoted to something that's broader or narrower, because that's the best way to serve your business, doing that with discipline right now is extraordinarily critical for you to have the runway to hopefully be successful coming out the back end of this pandemic.
Great, thank you. I think that's really good advice. Before I bring in our small business owners, I just want to remind the audience that if you look below the window where you're watching the event, you'll see some links from Co and Chase for more information on all of the things that we're talking about today. So now I'd like to introduce our panel of small business owners, and Christopher will be talking to you again soon. So welcome Manny Cosme, who runs an accounting firm in Washington, D.C. called CFO Services Group. We have Michele Gaton, who owns a restaurant in New York City called Extra Virgin. And we have Barbara Meikle, who is a Santa Fe-based artist and who owns her own gallery. So welcome, all three of you. Hi. So Manny, I am going to start with you and address the elephant in the room, which is that the Senate decided yesterday, I think, voted yesterday to extend the application period for the PPP loans. That has not been approved quite yet, finalized quite yet, but we're all thinking that it might be. So can you just give us like 30 seconds of advice for businesses who have not yet applied for a PPP loan for whatever reason and who may get the opportunity now?
Yeah, if you have not applied, definitely, I hope everyone out there has applied for it. But if you haven't for whatever reason, certainly as soon as it opens up again, make sure that you are number one on that list. You apply for the money. We've helped many, many, many hundreds of businesses at this point get the PPP loan. I can tell you that it does take some time to get that money. So if you do need money, make sure that you are at the front of that line. If you remember a few months ago, I guess now, they ran out of money. So you definitely don't want to be in that situation. So as soon as it does get extended, because as of today, you can't apply. It actually ended yesterday. So as soon as they open up that extension, definitely apply for it right away. That's my advice.
All right, that's good advice. So Manny, now my other question for you is, so you're in a unique position because you own a business where you're advising small businesses, but you're also a small business owner. So put your small business owner hat on right now, because I'm going to ask you a question as a small business owner, just what your business has been dealing with during the pandemic in terms of challenges and how you've had to pivot.
Yeah, it's been interesting because, my first thought when all this happened was, oh my God, we're going to lose all our clients because everyone's going to be in this sort of rough position. And so, we had to quickly figure out how we were going to pivot to make sure our clients were able to survive during this period. And then that quickly expanded to, well, how can we make sure our small business community here in DC survives? And then that just sort of rippled out from there. But, we did have to quickly think about, how can we pivot away from some of our services to provide a different service to people to really help them through this period. So it's all about, as Christopher mentioned, being agile there, being able to pivot to different things that you can sell, different markets that you can hit, and really diversifying revenue streams. That's been really pivotal for us.
Okay, great. Thank you, Manny. Hi, Michele. I'm coming to you next. So Michele owns a business in New York City. You've been in business 16 years, and you own a restaurant. So you've been really hard hit. And so tell us, how have you managed to continue to stay in business during this time?
Okay, well, it's been obviously very difficult from the beginning. We had to let go of 40 employees. And my partner and I, Joseph Fortunato, he's the chef, I run the front of the house. We were just determined not to close, to stay open, to stay afloat somehow. And so we had a couple of volunteers from the kitchen, a couple of front of the house people that stayed on and basically volunteering. And we just changed everything. We have a patio outside, small patio, and that just became a delivery and to-go area. So no one was entering the restaurant. And there we expanded. We started opening for breakfast, changed our menu to just have more things available. We probably added about 6 delivery platforms, just to, get to more people. We also expanded how far we were delivering, for the same reason. And yeah, I mean, a restaurant's all about social interaction. So not being able to do that, we just are trying to work it out every day.
Did you change your menu at all? Did you simplify your menu or anything?
We did. It's changed a bunch of times, but we added breakfast, which we didn't previously have. And we now have an all-day menu. So we don't separate breakfast, lunch, dinner, brunch. And so it just incorporates like everyone's favorite thing. And you try to hit all of the taste buds.
Right. And I'm sure that simplifies the process in the kitchen as well, right?
Yeah, because like I said, it was like 2 guys.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. So Barbara, you are an artist and also though run an art gallery for almost as long as Michele has run her restaurant, 15 years. And in March, you shut down the gallery. I guess March to May. So tell us a little bit about how you continue to generate revenue and serve customers while you were shut down for those 2 months.
Sure. Well, I have been making art since I was 4 years old and selling my work for over 25 years. So it was very important to me to keep my gallery open or running. And I also have employees that depend on me, and I raise money for animal rescue with my artwork. So there's a lot of charities that we devote our money and time to. So I actually have a baby boomer and a millennial and a Gen Z that work for me. So we sort of did our marketing strategy in those 3 ways. We did very traditional marketing, continued and amped that up with direct mail for my client list of 25 years, and also national advertising in magazines. And then with the millennial idea, we amped up our social media, Facebook, Instagram, and also email blasts. And we are doing a lot more online sales, so we made sure that our shopping cart was working well on our website. And then my little Gen Z's helping me do the live videos that we're promoting of my work, and that the live animal events we often have at the gallery. Of course, we can't have them now, so we're doing them virtually and posting them on YouTube and Facebook. And it's working great.
You were collecting email addresses for a long time, or names and addresses even, right? So you built a pretty robust list of customers that you had no idea were going to come in so handy, right?
That's correct, yes. And it's really worked well for me in that regard.
That's great. Manny, I'm coming back to you. So we talked about you, Manny, the business owner, and now let's talk about you, Manny, the small business advisor. What are you hearing from your clients are their biggest challenges right now, and how are you advising them?
Obviously, cash flow, of course, is a big issue. But as Christopher said very wisely, that's usually indicative of some underlying issues that we really have to address. But certainly uncertainty, that's a big one right now. So just not knowing what's going to happen, that's causing a lot of fear and anxiety in people. We don't know how to proceed. What do we do? How do we plan financially for that? So that's really big. Certainly around the PPP, one of the stipulations was to keep people on the payroll. And so there's a lot of questions of, well, what do I do with my employees if they're not working? Actually, I can't really have them do anything. Do I just pay them, or do they just kind of hang out there and get a paycheck. So that's been a lot of questions we've been hearing.
Yeah. So I'm going to come back to Michele. We've talked a little about the PPP loans, and I know that you actually got a PPP loan, but you can only use that for payroll and rent.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit more about all of the new and unexpected expenses you have had to endure to change your business to get through this time.
Sure. Yeah, there have been tons. I mean, all the way from starting with just all the delivery vessels, to-go cups and lids and gloves and sanitizer and masks and even for outside now to kind of create barriers. We bought trees with the curbside dining. We just bought planters. We bought umbrellas to deal with crowds and try to be in compliance. We just hired a security guard to make sure everyone's socially distancing and wearing masks. So it's been a huge expense, and none of it covered by the PPP.
Yeah,
that's difficult.
Yeah, it sounds difficult. And I know you were, just because I think this is something we need to address as well, that you just this morning found out that you thought you were about to reopen, at least partially reopen the inside, and now that's been rolled back a little bit in New York. So that was a disappointment this morning, right?
Yeah, huge disappointment. We're ramping up for what it was going to look like inside. That's another thing that we bought. We had we commissioned someone to create dividers. So these plastic partitions. I believe you can, as long as they're at least 5 feet high, then you can have people closer than 6 feet. I'm not even sure because the rules keep changing, but we bought, up over $500 for one divider. And so we just ordered more thinking, okay, we're going to be able to, let's do this. But
right. Well, hopefully you still will get to use them. Just a few more weeks. Barbara, you too got a PPP loan. But as we said, that only covers some of your expenses. So tell me a little bit about what you did. So you took some immediate steps to conserve cash.
Right. So I, first of all, tried to pay everything that I could on with a credit card or whatever other available money there might be that I could use. But I also did a few trades with my artwork to help pay some of those expenses. And then I got the loan, which covered my employees. And I also was able to defer my mortgage on the building for several months, which was a big plus. And then the fourth thing I did was I negotiated with my advertisers so that I got a much better rate on the national advertising I was doing. And that was important too.
That sounds really smart. Manny, you advise businesses to have to diversify their revenue streams for obvious reasons so that they're not dependent on one source of revenue. But you have some more specific advice on how you recommend they do that. And I like your advice because it's simple.
Yeah, so I spent a lot of time talking about this, and really a lot of time over the last few months now. It's weird to think it's been months, but the last few months really talking to people about diversifying their revenue because, well, here we are. This is what happens, right? So the more diversified your revenue is during an economic downturn, disaster like this, then the better insulated you'll be. So again, as Christopher was saying there. So to diversify your revenue and create new revenue streams, and that's just a fancy term for saying different ways that you can make money. There's really just three things you need to think about. It's what I sell, who I sell it to, and how I deliver it. So what product or service do I provide? Who do I sell that product or service to? And that's the one that a lot of people, I'll say, get tripped up on, is because, you typically kind of just go to the most obvious thing, right? I'm an accountant, so I sell accounting services to small businesses, but I can also sell my accounting services to other people. I can sell my accounting services to other accounting firms. I can sell continuing education to other accountants, right? So I can kind of mix that up there. So think outside the box there. And then the third way is how I deliver that. That can be online, in person. It can be geographically, right? Selling local versus national. So the more you can kind of mix and match those three categories, the more revenue streams you can create. And it actually becomes a really fun and simple exercise to do that can get you really excited and thinking about, oh, I didn't realize I can make money all these other ways. And the cool thing is that every time you change up one thing, it actually exponentially adds more revenue streams to your business. So all of a sudden you can sell a bunch of stuff. So if something happens to one of those streams, you can quickly pivot to another one and just pick up and keep moving along.
Yeah, Christopher, this sounds a lot like what you were talking about before. Did you have anything you wanted to add on this subject of diversifying revenue streams?
What I love about Manny's advice is that it's just really practical, and for creative people who have built their businesses based on an idea or a set of ideas, this is an opportunity for them to actually rethink their business of where it will be on a go-forward basis, and really provide an opportunity to insulate themselves in the future for weird things that happen. You just, life happens and you don't know exactly what the next day is going to provide as a small business owner. But one thing is certain, to Manny's point, if you understand the who, the what, and the how you're doing it, and you can think about other ways to do that allow you to actually generate more revenue, then you're going to be in a better place than businesses that aren't able to do that.
Right. Thank you. Michele, coming back to you.
Okay.
I know this is a tough time right now, and I just wonder, is there anything for you that you've changed about your business during the pandemic that when things do get back to normal, you will continue to do? Anything you've learned or different ways of doing business that you might adopt?
That's really tough. I've been trying to think of positive things that have come out of this, and I can't, but because we're just so restricted. But yeah. I'm happy that we can now sell alcohol. We can sell liquor for delivery and takeout. That's helped a lot. And yeah, we're diversifying. We're selling margaritas and quarts and just all anything we can think of. But I don't know what I can think of that's been great that I would take out of it, but I have learned a lot about the human condition and just human spirit, really, and just people that are just have that grit that they're going to stick with it and they're going to fight and not just sit at home on unemployment, that people want to work and want to help the community.
Do you deliver those margaritas to New Jersey?
For you? Yes. We'll get on that.
One thing that you said before is that you added some more delivery platforms and you're delivering to further distances yourself than you would. Do you think would you stick with a broader array of delivery platforms going forward?
I think yes, because now we have expanded our customer base because, as Christopher was saying, yeah, now we're going to places we never had before and people are really enjoying it. And so we'll continue with that for sure.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, Michele. Barbara, what about you? What have you learned about yourself or your business during this pandemic that will change the way you run your business going forward?
Well, I felt like the break we had of 8 weeks or so was a great creative time for me, so much so that I sort of fell in love with my studio all over again. And I want to spend more time there. So I want to delegate more work to my employees, and they've shown me they can handle it, especially during this time, so that I have time to create, think of new fundraisers for our animal projects, and make the art that brought me to this business 25 years ago, and keep doing it.
Yeah, so that's a great outcome for you. Okay, so we're going to do the audience Q&A. So audience, keep asking your questions in the panel. Before we do that, though, I just wanted to go over our poll results so that we, the panelists, kind of know where our audience is in terms of reopening. So let's see what those say. Okay, so we have a lot of the businesses so 30% are open, 30% roughly are partially open, and 30% are open but remote. So not very many are totally closed. So, okay, so that's who our audience is. Now, before we do our Q&A, I know I keep teasing it. We will do it in a second. But we want to do something else that's kind of fun. We did this last event. So we're going to do a word cloud so we can see the results happening in real time. So the question is, what one word describes your hope for your business in the second half of 2020? So type in your word. Please keep it clean. And we will see what people are nervous, cautious. Let's see.
Look.
Iffy.
Cautious.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think that's too surprising. I think we're getting two sets of answers here. So some of it is what people's hope is, and some of it is what people are feeling right now. But I think that this tells us kind of where everybody is. So I'm going to go ahead and move to the Q&A. Christopher, I am going to come to you first. So just hang on one second. Okay.
Okay. While you're doing that, I'll just want to say a couple of things. What I'm really encouraged by is just the overall optimism of the small business owners. Like this is the essence of why it drives half of the economy, because optimistic people with creativity who won't say no, who are not going to let even a pandemic prevent them from achieving their dreams, that they're focused on doing whatever is necessary to do the right thing for their business and for those that they employ. That's why this works. And so it's uplifting for me as someone who's in the banking industry, who's here to be helpful, to know that the business owners are just like, okay, if you want to get in this fight with me, I'm here and I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, I'm getting that from Michele. I'm feeling it. Michele is not going to be taken down by this. Okay, so this first question, Christopher, is for you because I think it's specific to banking. This person says, if I'm interested in a line of credit, what financial markers are you? So you don't have to speak directly for Chase, but if you could just give advice as an expert on this, what banks are looking at and in what priorities. So she says like gross margin, earning before tax or net income, and how does the current environment affect your decision making?
So the current environment is what makes it most difficult, because we've got to be able to figure out what your projected opportunity is based on where you sit today. So let's just take this a little bit apart. So if you had come to Chase or even another financial institution in January, you would have had all of 2019's spectacular results. You would have shown that the business is profitable, has an opportunity for growth, and all of those kind of markers would make us feel more positive about what the future is and your capacity to have access to capital. Right now, all of the financial services, we're all working through how to actually create the right algorithms to better understand where the future of the business will be. And a lot of that has to do with what we estimate how long we're going to be in this, whether it's a V shape, whether it's a recession for 12 months, kind of what the forward looking view is. From a banking perspective, we always look debt, what's your debt ratio? So how much debt have you already incurred? Do you have revenue capability to cover off on that debt? Are you repaying that debt on an appropriate basis? We also look at your cash flow, because we want to understand if you're really managing that tightly, to know that what we're looking at in terms of what your financials actually are is not something that just happened with one particular payment off of a receivable that's 120 days old, and if that's actually changing the way that we see your business, or that we've got a situation where from a supplier perspective that you've got an overabundance of suppliers that you need to be able to pay, and that's really creating thinness in your cash flow. So those are the kind of things that that we and other financial institutions think about. But my recommendation is you always should check with a person like Manny or with your banker at the institution that you work with to understand how they're prioritizing that. And they need to be transparent about that, because it's got to be helpful to you to run your business in a most effective way, to put your best face in front of someone that you're asking for capital from.
So as a follow-up to that question and what you said before about relationship building, I mean, I've heard that from so many people who work in the banking industry, that you need to build these relationships. But like, is it really true? Because I think people don't really believe it. So just tell me again, it's important that the relationship matters.
Oh, here's the way I'll say it. As opposed to thinking about it as being, Christopher Hollins, banker at Chase, think about it as, who do you know who's in the banking and or financial services industry? They're basically almost like an informal board of directors, people you can bounce ideas off of, people that you can get, their honest perspective on where things are financially, where they are with the economy. More importantly, where it is closer to your locale or to your industry, as opposed to knowing the banker, him or herself. My perspective is, if you had, 5 or 6 people like that you could trust and bounce ideas off of, you would be in a lot better place when it comes time for access to capital, because everything is put together. And even if you don't ever experience a banker, if you're doing this through a fintech or through a bank online, having that knowledge allows you to best frame up what it is your business is and does for success in the future. So Jeanette, don't think about it in the old school way that I've got to know, the Baileys and It's a Wonderful Life. It means that I need to know what happens within your business. I need to understand my business well enough and have consultants and or advisors who can help me along my way or along my journey.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. Manny, I'm coming to you. This person says, we are a chamber of commerce. I assume they mean a local chamber of commerce. And most of our members do not have income right now, so they can't pay us. What would you suggest to bring in cash? We are trying to do our annual fundraiser virtually, but concerned it won't bring us what it usually does.
Okay, sure. So I'm actually the treasurer for 2 local chambers of commerces here in DC. So this is right up my alley. So when all this happened, we kind of had the same thought of, the immediate reaction was, oh, we're not going to be able to bring in membership money. And then I actually challenged the board of both organizations to actually grow our membership and grow our membership funds during this period of time, which we are doing right now. So this actually goes back to diversification of revenue. So again, you kind of have to think about, well, if who has the money right now? So if your members directly don't have the money, which is that, remember, it's the what I sell, who I sell it to, and how I deliver it. So that middle one, who I sell to, maybe your members don't have money, but maybe other people have money. First, is there a different membership pool that you can tap? Are there other people that you can tap? Corporate sponsors, things like that. Is there grant money that you can get, right? Something like that. Then you have to go over to the first column, which is the what, right? What do I sell? So you sell memberships, but can you sell other things? So right now, you got to think about what people are going to need as we move through this recovery. Job training, for example, is something that we're talking a lot about now, as people maybe have not been able to go back to their previous job or career. Can you as a chamber train them? Can you help businesses get new employees? Things like that are going to become really important. So changing up that who, what, and how becomes extremely important, even for a chamber of commerce and for any business, like a restaurant, like Michele's business, for example. Really changing that up. The other thing for a chamber, I'll just mention real quick, is also you can provide these things by partnering up with other organizations that are doing something for you. So for example, I offer some accounting services to our local organizations for free as part of my community outreach. So you yourself don't have to provide it. You can reach out to other people to help provide this stuff for you. So
great. So Manny, Michele and Barbara, don't worry, I haven't forgotten you, and I'm coming to you soon. Manny, though, I have one other question here that you can answer really quickly. I think I already know the answer. This person says, if we received a PPP loan during the first round, are we eligible for a new round? And I assume the answer is no.
No. There's talk of a new round coming, but I don't know where we're at with that or what's going on. So there's been whispers of that, but who knows? But yeah, no.
A new round that you mean a new round that people could apply for a second time?
Yeah, there's been talk of a second sort of like recovery money coming for a second round down the road, but yeah, we don't know where that is. No.
Right now, it's all been talk. It's not anything that's in a bill form. I think it's what Congress is thinking about, recognizing that the pandemic may extend longer than was originally anticipated. But to Manny's point, it's not up for a vote or anything like that.
Got it. So Michele, I'm coming to you. This person says, I want to add staff, but given the uncertainty, I am hesitant. What factors do you recommend in considering this decision? So I know you've only added a little bit of staff, but I would say just more generally, you've had to make a lot of spending decisions at a time where I'm sure you did not want to be spending. So just like, what is your psychology and thinking behind how to make those difficult decisions?
Well, in terms of staffing, there's been a huge change in that as well, because now you don't have a host that stands there and just greets you, and a server that takes your order, and a runner that runs your food, and all of those things. Now you're everything. So you're gonna take the orders, you're gonna put them in, you're gonna get them, you're gonna like someone else might bag them for you, but you have to. So the role has changed and morphed, and a lot of people that come back actually don't like it, because they're like, wait, I'm a bartender. I just stand here and make drinks. Like, I don't want to also do all of these other things. So we have actually hired new staff that have been, because they're just learning it that way, super excited to have a job and ready to do all of the things that they need to do. So it's been interesting. So I would just be very clear with what the job roles are. And for me, it's best to keep it open, and have people have as much experience as possible in all of the different areas.
Right. Thank you. So Barbara, I'm going to hit you with a question that you definitely were not expecting, but maybe you can speak to it. So this person just is thinking more broadly about how the pandemic is changing the way businesses think about sustainability, not just environmental sustainability, but just resilience and having a business that can sustain. And I just wonder if you've had any deep thoughts about that.
Well, I think about what happened in 2009, and I owned the gallery then, and that was a long climb out of that type of economic collapse. And the way we did it then is actually helping me now, because I just put the blinkers on in a way and said, I'm going to create and I'm going to show my work to the world. So that means expanding advertising, expanding ideas about how you find new collectors, and it's just an idea of an expansion rather than contracting. And so you take a chance on investing even more in your business with your time and your money and your employees, and you drag them along with you so that they are part of the journey, that you're not just directing them, that they're involved in the ideas that you come up with together and why they may or may not work, and then you implement them together. And that's really important.
Thank you. I knew you were going to have an answer. Before I let you go, Barbara, before I go to the next question, can you tell everyone about that donkey and painting behind you, the donkey in the flowers?
Yes. So this donkey that I paint quite a bit, and he's standing in some hollyhocks, and his name is Bindi. He's a therapy donkey. He works with handicapped kids. So we raise money for his programs, and he is a donkey at Equine Spirit Sanctuary up in Taos. And that print, there is a print available. And every print that we sell, then Bindi gets to spend on his programs.
Thank you, Barbara.
Sure.
Christopher, I'm coming to you. This person says, what is the biggest mistake companies make when applying for loans or lines of credit?
I think the biggest mistake happens when they realize that they're doing it because they absolutely need it and are not prepared to hear no. When there's basically no room to move. I think that the second biggest mistake that happens, and this happens much earlier than actually making the application, is really running yourself into significant debt and expecting a line of credit or something like that to be able to bridge you to where you'll be in a better situation. Just because in this tight credit environment, it would be very difficult to justify that from any financial institution. It was difficult to have done that 3 or 4 years ago. Today it would be significantly more difficult to do that. So those would be probably the two things.
Okay, thanks. Hey, Manny, this person wants to know about what advice you would give people about opening a new business now versus advice you would have given them before the pandemic? Like, has your advice changed?
Okay. So I can answer that both as an entrepreneur and as a financial advisor. How about that? So as an entrepreneur, I don't know if my advice would change necessarily. I would give the same answer, which is recognize what challenges are out there right now. What has changed is the challenge has changed, right? So people are facing new challenges right now. So if you're opening up a business, if you had an idea, you need to be flexible. That's really important as an entrepreneur, just as a general rule. You need to be able to pivot with the market and figure out what's really the challenge out there so you can capitalize on that and fix the problem for people. So that's the same advice, basically. It's just the challenge has changed. And that's just really good advice. So again, diversifying your revenue streams, that's why this becomes really important so that you can quickly pivot. So maybe the thing that you thought you were going to sell a few months ago, maybe that's changed a little bit. And so you just need to be flexible to capture that new opportunity for now. And then maybe down the road, pivot back to what your original idea was. So that's always really important. As a financial advisor, I would also tell you, and especially right now, make sure that you create a set of financial projections for yourself so you have a really clear roadmap as to how you're going to start your business and grow through the first few months, weeks, months, years of the business, so that you can recognize when you need money, when you need to go get capital, what is your sales plan, what kind of resources do you need, etc. So those two are just timeless pieces of advice that you should always take no matter what.
Got it. Michele,
and Jeanette, just want to interrupt to Manny's point about the planning. That is also a major reason why it's very difficult for people to actually get lines of credit, because they didn't have that planning and projection, because sometimes things fall off, but being able to explain how your business was supposed to map to the plans that you put together is an important part of your story. And if you can't make the past change if you hadn't projected where the future was going to be.
Right. Got it. Michele, there's two questions here that I'm going to put together for you. The first is just a simple one. This person is curious. They may own a restaurant too. If you're doing like boxed meals for people to do picnics or barbecues or that kind of thing. So I'll let you answer that.
Yes, we are. Pretty much everything's in a box right now because it's all taken.
Right.
Have some things that we do family style, but a lot of the, there are a bunch of parks close by. So a lot of people are getting food and cocktails to go have picnics. So that's been great. We talked about doing like make it home meal kits, but people actually just like their food. They like it.
Yes, they do. And then my second question while I have you, Michele, is I feel like you're the person most likely to want to speak to this, is how are you helping your employees overcome just fear? And how do you stay optimistic when you yourself are probably also afraid?
It's difficult. I mean, it's a race. It's a race, and I just want them. I'm there doing it. I'm doing it with them. I'm bartending. I'm serving. So I just want them to see me continuing to fight. And a lot of people have rallied around that, and we've got a lot of support from the community, which has been great. I mean, just people get wonderful tips, and people just sharing our Instagrams, and we have a petition with over 2,000 signatures right now, and that's to the governor to the mayor to close the street so that we can have so all of the restaurants can benefit, because we have quite a few on our block. And so just seeing all of the support, it's really helpful for all of us.
Right now, are you able to go into the parking spaces on the street or just on the sidewalk?
We're able to go into the parking space, but it's difficult for us because the parking is across the street from us. So we can't access that.
Right. First you have to get to the street, and then I got it. So Barbara, hold on, because there was a question I was going to ask you about how you're sort of thinking of accounting for this year in the book. For instance, how are you thinking of accounting for this year in the books? Is this a write-off, just a regular year? How do you plan to account for it going forward? I think they mean financially.
Well, I think it's going to be a year. We're already, because of our online presence, the sales are already coming back. People aren't traveling as much, but they want to be in Santa Fe, so they want the art. So I'm optimistic. It won't be as great a year as last year, which was my best year, but it'll be pretty good. And that's what you got to do. You got to think about the future optimistically and just deal with the hurdles that come. And that's what we'll do.
And do you wanted to, can you address the fear question as well?
Oh.
How are you? Yeah.
Yeah, because one thing too that I found is that if we all think about all of this as a way to diversify, it gets a little more exciting. So even though this is a really weird time, the communication between myself and my employees, so even when we were closed, I would come in every couple of days, we sold something online, write it up in our diary and email it to everyone. So they knew we had business going on. And then once we reopened, I made sure we were in contact with our gallery association and other galleries and sharing stories with them about, I just had a big sale, and then everyone can celebrate. Or, this is an issue that we're having with getting masks, or how do we sanitize the gallery now that we have people back in? And again, communicating with your cohorts and your peers really does help.
Thank you. Christopher, we have time for one more question, and so I'm going to give this one to you. This relationship thing has really struck a chord with people, and people are asking, so how do you build a relationship with a large national bank? So maybe you could take us out with an answer to that question.
Okay, so there's a number of ways to do that. Obviously, us, like many other banks have, if we have a relationship with you and you have a larger business, we provide the ability for you to interact directly with bankers. But we have very knowledgeable people within our branches who understand the basics of how to manage a business. And where they don't have that expertise, they're able to actually call on people like my team and other teams within the bank to actually leverage that expertise. As an organization, Chase specifically, we are actually focused even more on being able to provide advice and counsel closer to the ground. So you'll see over the next 3 to 9 months us be far more active in being able to upskill and ensure that we've got people within the branches who can be really helpful with even the smallest of businesses. And then finally, you being able to leverage the capability of knowledge of other groups like CDFIs and other nonprofits who actually focus on advice and financial knowledge are also a very good way to start, because many businesses start off really small. They work with a community development financing institution. They build that business into a large enough business where national banks are then providing support for each and every one of them. So that's what I would think about as ways to actually address this.
Great. Thank you so much, Christopher. So that's all we have time for today. I want to thank all of you, Christopher, Manny, Michele, and Barbara. I wish you guys the best of luck. Michele, I'm going to come eat in your restaurant, and Barbara, someday I'm going to come buy that donkey painting from you.
Already.
Can order it online.
I'd like to thank our presenting sponsor, Chase for Business, as well as our supporting sponsors, ADP, FedEx, MetLife, and Square. And most of all, thank you to our audience for joining us today. Please join us on Wednesday at the same time every other week. So in 2 weeks, that'll be Wednesday, July 15th, when we will be discussing the different strategies you can adopt to restart your sales during this time. In the meantime, check out the great resources from Chase for Business, the U.S. Chamber, and Co. that are located at the bottom of your screen. And together we will reopen, recover, and rebuild. Thanks so much, and see you guys next time. Bye-bye.